I've spoken about Matthew Gianni a couple of times, and I think his story is amazing. On the How to Protect the Ocean podcast today's episode is all about Matthew Gianni. He's the guy that I interview on Friday. He is the co-founder and political and policy advisor for the Deep Sea Conservation Coalition located in Europe. Great guy, really great to talk to. But he started off as not a marine biologist, not a policy person. He started off as a fisher in the United States, like all over the world, right? He fished up and down the West Coast, up and down the East Coast, did trawling, did long lining, did pot traps, all these different types of traps. And, really worked. And what he really noticed during his time, I'm going to give you the quick story, but if you want to go check out the podcast, you can. Uh, during that time, he did some dredging off the central coast of California and deep sea dredging. And what he knows is as the dredge would come up and it would empty onto the table and they would do the sorting, they would see these corals, these glass sponges that they'd have to just like, there's no market value for them, and they would just throw them overboard and hoping that they would just, yeah, well, hopefully that'll just resettle or do something. But they'd probably all die. And other fish and invertebrates that they didn't have any market value, they'd throw over. But they're from the deep sea, so they're probably not going to survive afterwards. And so it got to him. He said, "There's so many things that is wrong with that," but he had to continue to fish. Then he starts to get into this advocacy, like I mentioned, just very similar to the story in Indonesia. He gets into this advocacy project where in San Francisco Bay, they're dredging and they got to take the dredge out, like dredge material out, and they want to dump it in a prime fishing area. So he got together with all his fishing buddies and colleagues and said, "Hey, you know what? This isn't right. This is prime fishing area. It's going to destroy the fishing and it's going to destroy our livelihoods. So you got to put it somewhere else." And he held them off for years until they decided to just throw the dredge over the continental shelf, which is a little bit better, but still don't love it. But you got to put it somewhere, I guess. I don't know. It seemed like a very quick way to get rid of some dredgeate, but at least they didn't put it on prime land, and he won that battle. He did some other he did project, where he took on oil and gas leasing on the central coast of California, won that. Then he decided to really switch after those two events and said, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to go work for Greenpeace and I'm going to work on their international fishing policy," and started to get into like not only national policy, but also started to get into international policy for like 20 years. And then he started to do, or for 13 years at Greenpeace, ended up managing and directing their ocean program. And then he came across the story, the Seamount study that looked at a number of different seamounts and how they were being dredged. So some were heavily dredged, some weren't dredged, and others were just none, not dredged at all. And they noticed this, researchers in Australia noticed, this is off the Tasmania, noticed a significant difference in the recovery of these species. They weren't recovering after 5 years. And so that inspired him to say, "Hey, you know what? We need to do something about deep sea trawling, especially in the high seas." Goes and co-founds the Deep Sea Conservation Coalition, and then says, "Hey, you know what? We're going to do one better. We're going to work with the UN General Assembly to ban high seas deep sea trawling." That's pretty amazing. I thought that was really cool. So I want to highlight this. And he's been working in international policy for the last 20 years, looking at not only deep sea trawling, but now after 2014 has shifted his focus, or started to look at the focus of deep sea mining, and has been a lot of the international meetings that people have been at. He's been there, mucking it up, making sure that the deep sea is being represented, along with a number of other organizations. Like this is the Deep Sea Conservation Coalition, which has 80 other organizations in it that are part of this coalition that work together to secure the deep sea and protect the deep sea. And to be honest, they've done a pretty good job so far, other than a couple of incidences where, it's not their fault, but other countries have decided to, do some research money. And now the US is doing this. So of course, it's kind of changing the game and seeing how things are going. But we'll see if mining happens in the US, if it actually happens, although, it doesn't, it's not looking great, to be honest. But again, hopefully it's just like a pump and dump, and these guys just want money. They don't necessarily care about the minerals that they're actually getting. They just really want money.